All right, the last lesson in activity 3 is lesson 3-3, which is converse, inverse, and contrapositive. On the previous slide, you should have seen a paragraph that indicated a few vocabulary words. You should have seen the word converse, inverse, and contrapositive. In the last particular lesson that we covered, in lesson 3-2, we talked about conditional statements, which was that if then statement. Well, it's telling us that the converse of a conditional statement is formed by interchanging the hypothesis, and the conclusion of the statement. So instead of it saying if then, it would be if that then statement, then the P statement, the original if. So notice how these switch positions basically. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the inverse and the contrapositive, but we're just going to cover them for definition's sake, not necessarily because we need to know it in depth. We just need to know the difference. Okay. The inverse is formed when you negate both the hypothesis and the conclusion. So we go from saying if P then Q to saying if not P then not Q. So notice this word of not being added in here. And with the contrapositive, it's not only negating, it's also interchanging. So notice it's changed the letters. If you notice, they switched order, and the not also got added in there. So I want you to look at our first chunk, which is problem number 1 part. Okay, part of number 1. You are given a conditional statement. If a figure is a triangle, then it is a polygon. So this is basically my P, and this part is my Q. Okay? But again, I only want to focus on the conditional and the converse. I'm not as focused on this inverse and contrapositive. So why don't you take the next 4 minutes with your partners and your table mate, pause the video, and I want you just to answer row 1 and row 2 of the table for problem number 1. So again, we're going to go 4 minutes to work on just these 2 rows in problem number 1. As you can see, the answers to questions 1, row 1 and 2, have been provided for us. I want to highlight the way that I wrote my converse here. Most of you might have written the statement, if it is a polygon, then a figure is a triangle. Well, it doesn't make sense for it to just say, if it is a polygon. So we actually need to move this phrase of a figure to kind of stay in the if part of this situation. So I put, if a figure is a polygon, then it is a triangle. Well, we have 2 statements here. One was true and one was false. And remember, it did state that if it was false, give a counterexample. So remember, with a counterexample, you want your hypothesis to be true and your conclusion to be false. Now, on to your debriefing.